Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Are You Screening podcast. I am your host, RUScreening.com's own Mark Eastman, and with me, as always, is co-host extraordinaire Shane Leonard.
Hello.
And what's so funny?
The
now?
video, because I always feel like I should look at you like
anything.
a newscaster and be like, hello. Like,
Yeah, we're on the news.
Yeah.
All right, so this week we have crazy theoretical schedule of what we're going to be talking about. We have to catch up on, apparently, Joker 2.
yeah.
Because we, I guess, I don't know what happened there, but it's been like a long time since we saw it.
Yeah.
But also we're going to cover a couple of streaming things that are much more recent. My Old Ass and Brothers.
Right.
And theoretically, if we can go through those really quick, I wanted to get to, and we might have to do this next week, and we'll see what happens. But I wanted to get to, now that we're doing the video and the YouTube and everything, this is something we did a jillion years ago, and we keep saying that we're going to do it again, just, for new people. But to have like kind of a segment of how we rate movies, where our ratings come from, and
Right.
and because we'll frequently say things like this is a perfect 7 movie, or
Right.
this movie is exactly 5, and it's like, well, what does that mean, and why is 7 this thing,
And what does it mean to you and me, and why are 2s harder for you and not so,
Right.
We've been doing this. I just realized when you said that, we've been doing this over 12 years.
Yeah.
And we did that. How do we rate what we rate?
It was
and why?
like one of the
It was
first
like one of the
few.
very first
Yeah.
few that we did.
It was
That's
within.
wild.
It was within
That's
like
wild,
the first
man.
10
Yeah,
somewhere.
it was
of
very early.
episodes.
Man,
yeah.
that's a long time.
So it's way back in the time machine when we used to do this on an actual phone.
Yeah, that's funny. We
Which-
should have a retrospective episode. They do it for everything.
No.
Talk about the old days. Start the show the way we used to do the show, looking at each other on the phone. Yeah, we used to do.
Yeah,
a lot of
that'd be
weird,
cool.
a lot of weird fun stuff.
Yeah, and we used to, and at one point we did it live, and
we took callers. We had a
like-
chat room.
Yeah, we did.
We had callers.
All kinds of different versions of this.
I loved when like the red light would beep. We had a call.
I know. Yeah.
Hope it wasn't a wrong number.
All right. Anyway, so if we're gonna do that, then theoretically we have to like totally jump on stuff,
Right.
and a lot of it is so strange actually to like think back now. It's like what a different world it is since we saw Megalopolis and
Yeah.
Joker 2,
Yeah.
and so. Anyway, Joker 2, which we don't need to explain, but I do have to throw out just because I'm that guy. Nothing so far this year has made me happier than Megalopolis and Joker 2 just tanking like crap at the box office.
Oh man.
I was every day. This was the first time I checked like the box office.
Yeah.
In like at least 5 years, like every day.
I
would check it every day and go, "What are they doing? Did they make any more money?"
I get why you would probably dislike Todd Phillips films, but it's a little surprising that you'd be so against Coppola. But maybe not overall, maybe just because of this. Like
No,
you're not a big Francis Ford fan? Not
No,
really?
not at all.
Not even the old untouchable things?
So I think at one point I was kind of a Coppola fan.
Yeah.
Way back in the day,
Right.
I liked the movies that he made
Sure.
pretty well, right? But at this point, it's sort of like a Spielberg thing,
I
right?
like old Coppola.
I
right.
liked Spielberg's,
Yeah.
first several movies,
Right.
or whatever.
Right.
I mean, I liked some of his movies. I didn't maybe love all of them, but I liked a lot of them. But both of these guys,
Yeah.
I have just been like resting on their laurels
Yeah.
for so long, and it's like, if somebody's a big famous director,
Yeah.
and they make a movie, and it's like, this is just some shit thing I wanted to do or whatever,
Right.
but they're big and they're, whatever. I mean, fine,
Right.
make your
Go
screwy
ahead.
movie, right? But I mean, it's like 20 years
Yeah.
since Coppola did anything that I think wasn't garbage.
Awful.
I mean, really awful even.
Yeah.
And it's like and every time something comes out, it's just like everyone's like, oh,
Coppola, remember Godfather?
it's so cool.
Yeah.
And then for a while, like the reviews come out and everyone goes, it's awesome. And then people watch it and they go, what the hell are you talking
Right.
about? And then by the time his next movie comes out, you don't even remember the last 3 movies he made. And it's like, look, come on. How long does this have to go on
Yeah.
before
You start remembering.
before this is bullshit? And I'll tell you how long it is up until you have to put all your own shit up
Right.
as collateral for
Right.
making the movie. That's how long.
That's when it comes home.
That's how long.
Yeah.
When people read your Megalopolis script and go, how much money you got? that's how long that lasts.
Yeah,
Anyway,
that's awesome.
yeah. So Joker 2, and I don't actually have anything against Todd Phillips. I just thought the first movie was idiotic.
I didn't. I do now. Hearing him talk about
Oh yeah.
now I
see.
do.
Yeah.
Like I didn't before. I was like, hey, I like the Hangover films.
Right.
That's fine. It's
Yeah.
fun. It made me laugh a lot. And then the pretentious, weird, avant-garde bullshit set in,
right.
and I'm like, well, now
He's too cool for
Now it's
anyone
you.
else.
Yeah.
Now it's like everyone who doesn't like his movies
Yeah.
is too stupid to understand them, or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. And the first Joker movie had plenty of fans, and it made a ton of money. It
made $1 billion.
but I think that the money this movie made is like the real amount of money the first one made.
Yeah.
Because the first one
Yeah.
just made money because, the first time you go to see it or whatever, or it's not even really like people were telling you had to go see it. It was just like,
Yeah.
I don't know, man, it's the Joker and I'm going. And then people go and you've got their money. People walk out of
Yeah.
the theater, they don't get to go, I want $9 of my $10 back,
Right.
because that's
Right.
how much it sucked, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
like you paid the money, and it's more about being a movie someone that people wanted to go see, far more than liking what they got as a result, right? I
Yeah.
think people really wanted to see a Joker movie, like
Yeah.
a good, real Joker movie. Not some guy read a Joker comic once and said, I have a better idea
Yeah.
for what the Joker is.
And it
or
reminded
whatever,
me
right?
a little of the way that people love The Shawshank Redemption without knowing that it was a Stephen King story because it didn't have a kill or anything in it.
Right.
I remember this. I remember people who aren't comic book fans but love art house films. And I like art house films too, so I'm not crapping on them. But this was a safe comic book film for them to like because it didn't have capes and it didn't have superpowers. It was about mental illness, so they could go to the art cinema, watch Joker, and come out and applaud and be like, "Yeah, I'd vote for that. That's
guess.
fantastic."
I don't know. Maybe. Anyway,
Well.
but and so as we try to get through a lot of stuff fairly quickly, we've already reviewed this movie now. it's almost like pointless. I have to mess with my phone. But anyway,
That's okay.
So Joker 2 is like
Yeah.
the whole movie, and not that anybody needs like a recap probably at this point, but the whole movie is like, he's in jail already. He's in prison. And now it's like the trial, and we start to get Lady Gaga being Harley Quinn.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of it's technically a musical, although I mean it's not really. It's kind of funny because the first criticisms I heard about this were like, people are bagging on Joker 2 because they say it's a musical. Like, who didn't know that already or whatever?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, is it though? It's not really.
No,
it's a
not.
movie that has a bunch of them singing in it, and that's not the same thing.
Right.
I don't know. People will disagree. Personally, I don't think technically it's a musical.
I don't either.
Just because there are several scenes where the main characters sing,
Right.
it's like it's actually not near enough to be really a musical.
Right.
I mean, it's just there are like, 4 or 5 scenes or whatever where it's a song and they do the song.
They communicate to each other through the song lyrics.
Yeah,
That's all it is. It's not.
And it's mostly just, I mean, a lot of them are he's dreaming or else there's like the one where they do the prison escape where it's sort of a meld. Like they are really doing it, but are they really doing it?
Right.
Or do they just think they're doing it or, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all just craziness for the fun of being crazy.
And because it fits the MO of what he thinks he's doing overall with Arthur and Joker.
Right.
Is you can't believe what you see.
Right.
It might be his psychosis. Maybe it's your psychosis. Like, ooh, look, I got you.
Yeah.
All right. You got me.
As far as actually like reviewing it, though, man, I hope we don't have a ton of dog barking, but we'll see what happens.
That's all right.
there, I guess. As far as the movie itself, everything that happens in the movie, I think, and I mean, we'll just start off. I give it a 0. I didn't
I'm pretty
find
sure I knew you were
I didn't find that there were any redemptive qualities in this movie. The only thing that I could possibly give this anything for is if you completely peeled away everything and said, some of the acting is good because in some of the acting, they are doing exactly what they are supposed to be doing, and it's weird, and it's probably not easy to do.
Yeah.
And it's, pretty decent acting. But, with nothing else that you are tying that to at all, I still can't give you anything for that.
It's weird to not block the film out. It was so bad. It's just so bad it was forgettable. There's a scene, because it is a court scene, it's a court film, and there's a scene where Arthur Fleck, who's the Joker, played by Joaquin, he's representing himself, which is a perfectly Joker thing to do.
Right.
He sees some people from the first film that he used to work with, and they're traumatized by his violence. And that scene is actually, it's not trying to subvert anything. It's not trying to turn you off in any way. It's not trying to be a musical by singing some weird pop culture tune to each other. It's effective because they're acting. And Joaquin is a great actor. He can be really good when he's got the right things going for him. And the other characters who I'm blanking on their names of, but they're like saying, I'm shaken, I can't sleep at night, I worry about him every time I go around a corner, every shadow jumps at him.
Right.
And you see, like, this isn't just a superhero film or a supervillain film, this is just, an effective court case. And there's like 6 or 7 minutes there where I'm watching that, I'm like, this is great, because everything around it is sewage.
Right.
And this just stands out on its own against all kinds of courtroom scenes. Is it amongst the best ever? No, because the film, like you said, is a 0. Like, that's what I'm at too. I was not a fan of the first film in most regards, but I understood a compartmentalization of it in a way. I liked the first film when it was about Arthur Fleck, a guy who is just struggling with day-to-day life with mental difficulties and those around him. But the moment they tried to tie it to him being Joker,
Right.
the film falls apart. It doesn't work on any level except that people wanted it to work that way. It's like a manifested film. This film just doubles down on all the stupidity of things and tries to be, according to Todd Phillips, subversive, where you don't know what's happening. Like, is he the Joker, or is he the start of the real Joker's origin story?
Right,
like,
the guy at the end.
And I'm like, first of all, we don't know what's happening because you want to film it and make it so that some of them are illusions in his head, delusions in his head, and then other things you can't trust really did happen or didn't happen. You're trying to describe to me a dream you had 2 nights ago that scared you, and all it sounds to me is like you're wasting my time.
Right.
It's such a weird failure.
That's pretty much exactly the movie. And I do want to mention that I think Lady Gaga is, who I'm no fan of, so I will say that. I think she is both great and horrible in this movie. In various scenes, I think she's actually really good
Yeah.
in a couple scenes. And I'm like, well, okay.
Yeah.
Why don't you do that all the time? Because in other scenes, I just think she's horrible.
Yeah.
There are other scenes where she could just be person off the street who has no idea how to act, never tried to before.
Right.
And they're like, read these lines. And she goes, okay, I'll read these lines. And then that's what you get. And we don't even like, I don't know, try that again or something because she's Lady Gaga and that's it. I don't know. There are some that are just awful, but there are some that are really good. And I've seen her in other stuff, even though I don't really like her. But she's been in other stuff where she's pretty good.
She's fine, yeah.
So, I don't know if... And the thing that's weird is I would like to write off some stuff.
Yeah.
Except that they all talk about the movie like they think it's really great.
Right.
And I'm like, well, look, I mean, now I can't give you any leeway, right?
Yeah.
Now I can't give you some kind of deal on that or something because you say it's great. And I mean, they're not going to come out and say it's garbage, but you can have an interview after the movie where you're not doing anything to tear down the movie, but also you're not so overselling it that it's clear that you really think that it's the best thing ever.
Every once in a while you'll see a film that's so bad with me and you'll say, I don't care what their next project is. I hate it.
Yep.
Like it's burned you that much. I don't know if this is true or not, but actually was just talking about this film last night with a friend of mine, and he said, because he just saw it, and he said, now I understand that thing that had happened. I guess it was Cannes or whatever festival. Cannes is famous for how long your ovation is.
Right.
And they said, he said he saw footage of lip readers on Joaquin Phoenix as he walked by Lady Gaga and you can't hear because there's their applause. And apparently what he says is, that was horrible. He knows.
Really?
Apparently. And I want to track this down because this is just somebody I know on the internet said YouTube showed them something, right? But I want to go see if that's it. And again, if it's just professional lip readers, I just think that's really funny that he just sort of was like, well, that sucks.
Right.
I guess that's what we did. If they all pulled together and just circled their wagons and said, look, we really defend Todd's vision. We really thought we did good work. That's admirable. I actually think specifically for Lady Gaga, and I think a lot of the time when Joaquin is awful in this film is that they're doing exactly what Todd Phillips wants them to do.
Right.
Not sabotage the film. I'm not that chaotic about it. I just think that he's got a bad idea. Yeah. And he's the boss, and they're paid to do what he wants them to do.
And, for other, I guess, quality of film sort of, hit actual marks.
Yeah.
The pacing is so weird, and the scenes, back to back, almost seem like there are chunks of the movie where you take, and plus it's insanely long.
It's so long.
But there are parts of the movie where you take a half hour of the movie, and maybe each scene is, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever, in that half hour. And I swear to God, they're in there randomly.
Right.
They don't even, try to walk you through the story in a way that, because it's all back and forth, and this happened before, and now this happened later, and he meets Lady Gaga. And it's he meets Lady Gaga, and it's great that he's crazy because that can be your excuse for everything that doesn't work, right?
That's exactly right.
But he meets Lady Gaga, and 5 minutes later, he's completely in love with her, and everything she says is gospel, and now he's in love. Now he has to reevaluate everything about his life because I'm I mean, that happens a lot in Hallmark movies or something, but you're what? And the movie just goes, well, but he's crazy. Right. So it's okay.
It's
because somebody was mildly nice to him once, and he's crazy.
Right.
So that can be how that happened.
Right.
And then it's he escapes, and this happens, and it's well, this happened, and he's crazy.
Yeah.
So that's why it makes sense. And you're man, come on. The story it's very clearly a story told by someone who believes that they came up with the greatest story ever, and it doesn't need any work.
Right.
It's like, you know,
Yeah.
it's like Stephen King
Yeah.
writing a book,
Right.
and he like writes one draft
Right.
and goes, man, that just came out
He just-
awesome.
yeah.
And then you read it and you're
Yeah.
like, well, what about this part? And he goes, shut up.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
it's like, it's so
Yeah.
lost in its own. It's weird that it is itself such a like narcissistic
That's the ironic part. They
you
don't
know,
even grab what they had.
idea.
Yeah.
And then talking about, it's like it's about itself.
Yeah. And there's a real fun thing there if they paid attention to it, where fundamentally Harley Quinn is in love with Joker, but when he starts to wear down in the film and accept responsibility for what Arthur has done, becoming more Arthur than Joker, she basically kicks him because she wasn't in love with him. She's
Right,
in love
right.
with who he was pretending to be.
Right.
That's the whole movie. And I don't mean like that's the film that you should run with. That's an analysis of the movie. People are in love with this because it's pretending to be something it really isn't. It's supposed to be like this Oscar-winning take on a supervillain that everybody loves, and it isn't.
Right.
But it's convinced you that it has, so who's crazy?
Right.
You know, I don't know. There's so many potentials for the story that was here, even in the hands of someone who isn't as widely acclaimed, I guess, as Todd Phillips. I guess if you're known as the Hangover guy, look, you know, before Peter Jackson got a hold of the Lord of the Rings, he was the bad taste guy. You know, he was
Right,
he
right.
wasn't, people were stunned that this guy got the job. That doesn't necessarily limit your talent, but when you get an opportunity to expand that talent, you've got to use it and use it well. Otherwise, I mean, I'm going to make a low-hanging fruit joke like about Brett Ratner or some awful director who just keeps getting jobs because he's somebody's nephew.
Right.
I mean, there's an awful lot of stuff there that they could have mined for things. And actually, you have to try to wonder. I remember when we walked out of there cracking up and like, well, poor Todd didn't have a Martin Scorsese film to rip off. You know, it's almost like he must have been crapping his pants when they said, yeah, we're going to do a sequel. And he's like, okay, what do I
Right.
rip off now? Because seriously, one of the things that aggravated me most is it's Taxi Driver and the King of Comedy.
Right.
You know, I guess what would have been really fun, and I was talking about this briefly with my friend about it. I'm like, what if he just ripped off Shutter Island? What if he'd just been like, I don't know, am I crazy or are you? And we'll throw the Joker in. And it reminds me of the thing that you often always say as we're getting ready to move past this is, you know, certain James Bond films, certain Batman films, like you want to make a movie, do it. But when you throw Batman in it or when you call it a Bond film,
Right.
you've changed the dynamic of everything and you don't even have a Bond film.
Right.
So go make your spy film. Don't call it Bond. You'll be better off than fitting in the confinements of what has to be there to make this
Right.
that film.
I think-
and that reminds me of this all the time. Like you
Yeah.
had a great film here until you tried to lacquer it with Joker.
Yeah, I think even still this wouldn't really be a good movie. But
Right.
if you just made it, here's this guy, and he's not the Joker, and it had nothing to do with the Joker, right?
Right.
And we didn't have to have all of the, you know,
Overhanging
Joker
thing. Yeah.
stuff. You know, it might have been a lot
have been
more
great.
interesting.
Yeah, it
right?
might have been
and
really great.
and it has like that scene that you said when he is finally like having to face people that he has messed up.
Yeah, right.
And it actually does something to him,
Right.
right? That's actually, you know, not bad.
Yeah.
It's
right.
just that
I agree.
It's just that is not really the movie you're watching anyway.
Right.
So it's like that scene is from some other movie.
Yeah.
Right? And it's just
Yeah.
like, well, but I want it to be in here, so now we're gonna do that.
And it ends, and again, quickly, I know we're off this, and it just ends in the most gratuitously sort of offensive way where it's almost like, you know, and they woke up and it was all a dream.
Right.
Like
Right.
you get to a point where you've deflated and depressed and exhausted your audience with expectation and, you know, delivery of what you're promising. And then you're like, well, let's do this as the end. And that'll really shake them up. Because it's better to leave somebody emotionally excited or angered than it is to just be like, yeah, I kind of screwed up my art,
Yeah.
and that's it. So,
all right.
I would say miss that.
I
film.
can hardly stand to talk about that anymore.
I would say skip
horrible.
that. It's
and
really bad.
you
We're gonna
know,
have to talk about
could've-
it again.
It could have been better. It could have been better
It's
if it was much shorter
Mm-hmm.
and somebody else was there to just go, yeah, but look, let's make a movie.
the
You know
problem.
what I mean?
But you know this, man. The problem is, the first one made $1 billion,
Yeah.
and for whatever reason, it made that money. Now suddenly, that's like saying J.K. Rowling needs a better editor.
Right.
Bull. She's just like, hey, I'm still J.K. Rowling, and I'm making this money. I'll write what I want, and you'll print it. And they're like, well, okay.
Right.
I will. You know, like until he makes this mistake, he's still going to do whatever he wanted, and now he can't do anything. So, oh God. Anyway, the hilarity of this is we're going to talk about it again, probably briefly when we get to our worst list.
Well, sure. All right, so moving on.
God, that sucks.
All right, so we'll jump on
What do
these
you wanna
other
do
movies,
next? Yeah.
and
We'll go through 'em.
I don't know if we can get through 2 movies and do anything else, but
Yeah.
okay, Brothers. So it is.
Peter Dinklage.
I'm pretty sure it's on Prime.
Oh,
It's
sorry.
streaming
I
on
think it
Prime.
is too.
But yeah, it's Peter Dinklage and Josh Brolin.
yeah.
They're brothers. They are basically raised in like this, burglary family or God knows what. Right?
Yeah. It's sort of like a hillbilly elegy sort of environment,
Yeah.
you know.
And yeah. So anyway, it's when they're very young, basically, their mom and her like boyfriend at the time or whatever,
Right.
are involved in this heist, and then she has to go,
Right.
or
right.
whatever, and they kind of get left to their own devices, and we jump back and forth a lot in time. Peter Dinklage is when the movie starts in the real present, because like I said, we jump around a lot. He's like just getting out of prison, for doing like 5 years,
Yeah.
and Josh Brolin has like his own new life,
Right.
and we get into some stuff at the beginning, which is kind of funny because he never even called, he never like visited him the whole 5 years he was in jail.
Yeah.
And he goes to jail for a job like that they're both on.
They
right?
both did. Yeah.
And Peter Dinklage has like this plan to, he's got
One
a plan
more.
to pull one more caper,
Yeah.
which Brendan Fraser, who's a guard at the
yeah.
prison, is
Yeah.
involved in,
Yeah.
because he's going to get his cut of it, or whatever.
Right.
And then as we go on, he's got to sucker his brother into doing one more job with them. Turns out like there isn't really a job, and then spoiler alert, sort of, for like some parts of it, but actually they're going back to get the stuff from the original heist that his mom pulled.
Yeah.
And Brendan Fraser just keeps popping up and
Yeah.
and trying to muscle everyone around and everything, and hilarity ensues. And basically it's like they go on a kind of a road trip
Yeah. Right.
adventure. Mom shows back up. It's and it's just insanity, basically. It's
Yeah.
not even like hilarity ensues. It's just like being
Right.
crazy ensues.
Yeah.
And they're all just as off as you can be.
Right.
And Peter Dinklage kind of embraces that.
Yeah, loves it.
Josh Brolin's trying to get away from it.
Yeah.
And everyone has to lie to everyone to get anyone to do anything.
Right.
And everyone's just lying about everything all the time. Okay, and that's basically the movie. Now, I wanted to give this one a higher rating because, it's just kind of a goofy bit of fun.
It's
right?
it's an 88-minute film with credits, so that's like 84 minutes. Like it's an hour and change.
Yeah.
Literally.
And Peter
no, you
Peter
hated
Dinklage. No, I didn't at all. And Peter Dinklage is really, really good at it.
He's really
right?
good.
And he's a lot of fun. But the most I could give this movie is 6.
Oh man,
And,
that's exactly what I thought you had.
And
Seriously.
I like it.
Yep.
just 6,
Yep.
right? And it could have been better. It could have been a movie that I'd be like, oh, at least like 8,
Yep.
right? But there's some of it that's just so stupid that it's not that.
Yeah.
And the problem is that it's mixed together, right? Because a lot of it is, even though it's funny, it's like kind of a serious funny, right?
Right.
It's
That's right.
not like a screwy, whatever.
Right.
Except that like some of it, all of a sudden they go, well, I don't know what else to do, so this is the screwy part, and that'll be funny too.
Right.
And then it's just like you're mashing your comedy drama. We're kind of being serious, but we're funny, but also we're not being serious at all, and this is completely stupid. And we're, driving the like backhoe with a dead body, and you're like,
oh man,
wait, man,
it doesn't quite.
And then there's an orangutan,
and it doesn't quite go full like Ace Ventura, but it can't quite stay full Ocean's 11. Sometimes there's a scene and I'm watching it, and again, 88 minutes long, and I'm cooking through this thing and I'm having fun because everybody else is having fun. And suddenly it's like when Harold and Kumar go to White Castle and you're like, so you're riding a cheetah.
right?
It's sort of like that. And then suddenly it just moves away from things. I told somebody, if you could imagine the Bad Santa crew remaking Smokey and the Bandit, this is what you'll get if they don't have more than $100,000 as a budget.
Right.
And because Brendan Gleeson is basically Buford T. Justice, showing up all the time trying to catch the rascally guys. He's dangerous in this film, not Jackie Gleason. In this film, he's dangerous and lethal, but still just is sort of like always on them.
But
and
also
they can't
mostly
shake him.
because he's stupid.
And because he's
right.
and because his dad is like, you better go get my stuff. There's a whole weird. One of the things I really liked about this film is there's so much going on in such a maelstrom of kinetic storytelling, and yet it feels sort of spread out too at the same time. Like they really explore things, and I think that's because everybody in the film is talented.
Yeah.
Dinklage, Brolin, Marissa Tomei shows up for a while. Emmett Walsh is in there. Brendan Fraser, like there's a whole. Glenn Close is in there.
Right.
Like she's their mother. I also still hit a ceiling, and I'm like, son of a gun. If you just focused one and pushed more, you would have been past 6. I gave it 6.2 because I thought it's better than average. And it's fun. We're not that cantankerous about a movie has to be less than 90 minutes, but this was fun to just fire up and be like, if it sucks, I don't have to sit here that long. If it's great, I'm going to want it to have gone on more. Actually, I had more fun with it than I thought. I didn't want it to go on more because I thought it did everything it needed to do quickly.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of the Peter Dinklage story on his own, and the Josh Brolin story on his own actually worked. And those are the things that almost never work. In a movie like this, generally the only thing that works, if anything works, is like them together.
Yeah.
And the whole premise of the movie is, basically people who are just sparring with each other constantly.
Yeah.
And, hey, we're family, but also we're fighting all the time.
Right.
And, we have to turn the hose on them in the yard at one point because they're fighting or whatever.
Yeah.
And usually the only thing that'll be either worth a laugh or interesting to watch will be whatever they're doing together once they're on the road and they're in the hotel and they're insane and whatever.
Right.
But they both just kind of work on their own, and you get them as characters on their own.
Yeah.
And a ton of movies that are like this, the only real character in the movie is like, Jeff and Sam, or is like them together as a character, right? And so that was great.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of fun, and it's just goofy stupid. And there's just too much stuff in the movie where it really felt like we were like cranking this out, and we had kind of an idea. And then somebody goes, I don't know, orangutan.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, come on. And then we'll have a golf cart chase. There were too many things where it just was like, we're not really sure what to do. Right. And they had this structure around it where, they Brendan Fraser finally like has him in the woods.
Yeah.
And mom actually takes off, and you're like, what?
Yeah,
And
I love that scene. I loved it.
worked, right?
Yeah.
Even as it's not like, Shakespeare or anything,
No, of course,
but it's like, we got something to do there.
Yep.
And there is this whole, like I said, there's this big structure around it, but it was like too quick. And it was like, and no one cares, right?
Right,
I mean,
that's the other thing.
because that's the kind of movie it is.
Right.
No one cares if this is really good or whatever.
Right.
But, this could have been, I mean, it's kind of like the raunchy, like
Yeah.
way less serious, like Midnight Run.
Yeah.
Could have been.
Yeah.
Right. It
Right.
could have been something that like you would go back to after a few years and go, you know what? I'm going to.
This is quick. I'm going to throw Brothers
I'm
in.
going to write that again.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
But like I said, it just didn't care.
I don't know.
No one cares about whether or not it's quite that good. But still, it's
good enough.
It's really fun.
Yeah.
It's just that it's like, man, come on.
It's
but
pretty
every
wild.
time Brendan Fraser is on screen,
Yeah.
you're like, all right.
Yeah, I'm game for that. I felt that way. The scene in the woods when the mother runs works for a bunch of different reasons. Like you said, there's no ingenuity here. It's just every single character is doing exactly what every single character would do if you put them in that pool right now.
Right.
Like, and I'm watching it and their reactions, even Brendan's reaction of like, really? Like, you're going to do, oh, come on. All right. And he's just
Right.
so haggard. Like, the monkey thing, I cracked up. Like, I got a feeling
It's-
like you almost
it's-
turned it off. I almost lost myself just like, because I'm watching Brolin's reaction, not Dinklage's, and I'm just like, when he realizes what he's saying and he's breaking down, because Peter Dinklage is supposed to be the brains of the outfit, and Josh Brolin is the monstrous younger brother, but just he's not mentally deficient.
the
He's just slow.
Right, right.
He's a good guy. He's trying to do the right thing. He's just not a genius.
He's not
But
even
watching
slow.
him-
He's
watching
just
them-
not that fast.
He's just not that
Right.
fast, right? But when he talks about what just happened at Marissa's, and I'm like, I guess I kind of believe that had to happen, but this is the film.
Right.
Me moving off it quick, unless you had more to say, is also like, if they had just trimmed it down to be really, really like perfectly, it would have been a 48-minute movie. Like, how can you do that?
Right,
like, you
right.
have to, for this, you've got to pluff some stuff
Yeah,
in.
they
so-
had to have something, but they just had the wrong.
They just had the wrong
and,
things.
And they
That's right.
had. I feel like
Yeah, I agree.
when they were in the point where they had to come up with some stuff. I don't know. It switches gears.
It really does.
so much.
Weirdly, yeah. Yep.
That it is like you're watching. If they would have pick either movie.
Right. Go one way or the other.
Right.
You're going to be
and
all
do
right.
that.
Yeah.
It would have been.
Yeah.
It would have been better. They'd be very different movies from
Yeah.
each other.
Yeah.
But the scenes, like the first half hour, 40 minutes, where we're focusing a lot on Dinklage and the whole that he's in jail and
Right.
and how things are coming together with Brendan Fraser and this whole scheme.
Yeah.
That stuff is like so like one movie.
Yep.
That is just its own little world.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're like, whoa. like,
Right. Let's
you
let
know,
the
it goes
clowns out of the car now.
and it's fine.
Yeah.
It's not terrible, and I recommend watching it. It's fun.
Yeah.
You know what you're getting yourself into.
Right.
But
Right.
anyway, I still totally recommend it. I
I do
can't,
too.
I just can't give it any more
Right.
than that because it just had so much.
Yeah.
All right. My old ass. We got
That's good.
we got time enough to actually do this anyway.
Definitely.
We'll have to do the rating thing next week.
Yeah.
Next week, I believe we're going to be doing Red 1, which I kind of can't wait to see.
I'm pretty hopeful that this is going to be a lot of fun.
It seems bonkers.
Man, it really
right?
should be good.
But anyway,
We'll see.
but we'll do that, and we'll do like the rating thing. So now you're prepared. You can subscribe and all that stuff so that you don't miss it
Right.
when we do that. All right, my old ass. So this is a very weird movie, and very. It reminded me, like the first half hour I was watching this movie, it reminded me of like the mid-90s.
Yep.
When there was a movie, something like this,
Yeah.
every time you turned around.
Right.
Like very low budget and some kind of really screwy premise
Yeah.
that we're just going to run with.
Yeah.
And, not explain in any way.
You just accept it and
we're
go.
just gonna
Right.
we're just gonna go and see
Yep.
what happens. Or like, maybe early 2000s or something like that. But
Yeah.
there were a lot of movies like
Yeah.
this that this reminded me of. And it's got God, what's her name?
Aubrey Plaza.
Is and basically you've got this about like 18-ish.
Yeah, she's just on her way
girl.
to college.
And she goes with her like two friends
Yeah.
on this goofy thing for her birthday.
Yep.
Where she ignores her family.
Yeah.
And they run off. It's hard to explain what happens in that first part. Like, you watch them do it, and then you go, okay, now I have to say what they did. And you're like, what the hell did they do? They got a boat and a tent, and they went to like a random island,
Yeah.
had some mushrooms. And I'm like, what is that? That's like just, they went on walkabout for like one day.
I was just going to say, they did a high school female version of Walkabout where they're, for some reason we don't get privy to, they're all just sort of like, before we go to college, we have to have an experience.
Right.
And
We
we're going
have
to
to do something.
a hallucinogenic mushroom kind of thing.
And what we're going to do is we're going to get a boat and we're going to go, that's an island over
Right,
there. I guess
right.
we'll go there. And they got mushrooms. They're putting up the tent. Anyway,
Yep.
they do a bunch of mushrooms. And all of a sudden, Aubrey Plaza shows up as this girl's future self.
Yep.
And she's just sitting next to her.
Yeah.
And they just start talking. And she's like, look, I have the scar that you got from the blah, blah, blah. And I'm you from the future.
Right.
And she tells her all this stuff to do or not do or whatever.
Right.
And and especially avoid a guy named Chad.
Right. Yeah.
And then, she's sort of gone. They talk about who they are. It's like they just have some conversation about who I am to myself or,
Right.
Whatever. And she's like, so, do this, don't do that, whatever, but
Right.
stay away from Chad. She wakes up the next day and finds out that her future self put her number in her phone.
Right.
So she texts her and it works.
Right.
And she responds, and then she meets Chad.
Right. Yeah.
And then they call each other and talk to each other all the time. And she tries to avoid Chad. Mm-hmm. And then, unfortunately, she starts liking Chad.
Yeah.
And then eventually she comes back and she's like, but I tried to avoid Chad. It didn't work. And, whatever.
Right.
And hilarity ensues.
Right.
And most of the movie is just either conversations with herself or conversations with Chad.
Right.
And that, really, that's like all you get.
Yeah.
And the movie feels like somebody in like, English 202 had to write an essay where you have to make up like a short story.
Right.
And then somebody made a movie out of it.
Yeah.
And not that that's a bad thing.
Right.
It's just what it feels like.
Yeah.
It just feels like somebody, first of all, it feels like somebody got assigned this.
Yeah.
There's a lot of the conversations and the writing that's happening. And not that it's not good or whatever.
Yeah.
It just feels like something someone got assigned to write. A lot
Right.
of the things that people say and the general arc that we're having, I don't know. There's something that doesn't feel, like completely spontaneous about it or whatever. Like I'm just going to write a story. There's stuff that happens. Either it feels like you got assigned to it, or you're like, okay, I'm going to write a story, and it's going to have all these moments and these things, and somebody has to say this line.
Yeah.
And I'm going to make that happen or whatever. Anyway, but that's generally what it's about. I gave this movie a 7 because I couldn't find enough things that I didn't like about it.
Yeah.
Even though it's a little goofy, and it's a little goofy in like if Hallmark like got serious and said we're gonna do something other than Christmas.
Yeah.
And like this seems like it would be that, but it would be good.
Right.
But if they could actually do something good. but I liked a lot of what was happening, and I didn't not like enough stuff, you know? And
Yeah.
But man, is it like low budget,
Yeah.
you know,
Yep.
nothing going on behind this. Like, you know, we got like access to like 2 places we can film. And like,
Right. Yeah. Right.
and we got Aubrey Plaza
Yeah.
in on it or
Yeah.
whatever.
Right.
And we got like, I don't know, a couple of other actors that we could, it's
Yeah.
so like weirdly low budget, but it's kind of awesome how it doesn't feel as low budget as it clearly is.
Right.
So they at least did that, and that's cool.
Yeah.
Right. But if you actually watch the movie like from that perspective,
Right.
you're like, wow, they filmed this in like a weekend
Right.
at like
Right.
one guy's house, and at the back there's a river.
Yeah.
And it's like, damn,
Yeah.
like you can make you can make a movie for nothing these days. But I liked a lot of the conversations that felt like they were fairly real. The goofy conversations with your future self were goofy, but kind of like I could allow them
Yeah.
or whatever, you know. I mean, they were good enough, and it had something it was trying to say, and it said it, and it
Yeah.
did pretty well at saying it. I mean, I don't know, but anyway, that's what I gave it a 7.
I almost gave it a 6.5, and I liked it more than that. But I was trying to argue, and we've talked about this, and we're hinting at it for another show, obviously, about our ratings. Sometimes 7 is a gulf, and you can be high 7, which feels like it ought to have been a 9. I'm sort of low 7, where I couldn't give it a 6. It didn't feel right. When I say it out loud, I'm like, it's not a 6. It's better than that. But 7 is so big. Low 7 sounds stupid too. It's funny you say what you did, because I actually thought it has the feel of somebody who's always wanted to write something, and they take like an adult writing course, and they're like, okay, we're gonna, your assignment is, tell me something really strange that happened to you when you were a kid.
Right.
And this woman says, I took
And
a
you have to make it
hallucinogen.
up.
I took a hallucinogen, and I thought I had a conversation with
Right, right.
an older self, and they went, write that.
Right.
And then you have to write what you remember really happening, and you're like, well, I'll write around the edges, and you flirt with something. This movie is, for me, terribly flirtatious. They're flirting with each other. There's a weird rush. Sometimes the film, what I didn't like about the film is it's hurry up, wait.
Right.
Like there's enough interesting information to be mined in if you truly had a conversation with yourself at 18. There's a lot of dumb things my 18-year-old self would have asked me, and I would have been like, I can't tell you that, but just I can give you a little bit of a hint. Stay away from women named Dallas.
Right.
You know, and you're like, all right, I'll stick with that. There's a scene where Maisie Stella, who plays the younger version of Elliot, and she's great. She's sort of weirdly, like, aggressively obsessed with just kissing herself.
Right. Right.
And I'm like, Aubrey is game for this because she's playing very much Aubrey Plaza. And there's a thing that's going on there, but you just got to let it like rise on its own. You're really rushing this. And if you just let it go naturally like it does later, this is a 9, easy.
Right.
It's everything I wish films like Booksmart would have been, when you put 3 female characters, 2 female characters, 5 of them together, and it passes the Rachel Bechdel test of not talking about men all the time. Like, this thing is smart, fun, playful, flirtatious with the audience and with itself. It just doesn't quite have enough in the one story it's trying to tell, in the pocket that it's trying to tell effectively, to pull it out of that range for me. And there are weird things that, for me, felt like it might have been adapted from a really fun book. The scene when she finds out her parents are selling the farm.
Right.
And she rushes to her dad, who's out in the middle of a cranberry field. And he says something that's actually sort of weirdly perfect in a longer book. He just says, we would have told you, it's sort of hard to nail you down, kid. And I get that she's flying around everywhere. There's a romance with a woman at the diner or the gas station or whatever. There are all these little things that just feel like they were longer pieces of a chapter that got quartered and stuffed. And as much as I had fun watching the film, and as much as I actually really enjoyed watching them have fun making the film, those speed bumps were really sort of not jarring, that's too dramatic, but just unforgettable. Like, it's really just unnecessary to make a film that would have been such a quiet darling. And then I'm like nitpicking at things. There's a scene where Aubrey Plaza gets to see somebody from her past and engage with them, and you feel the real emotional weight there of all the banter back and forth, the quick, fun, flirtatious talk between you and anybody else. And there's a real moment of grief and sadness here, and it's palpable. And I'm like, son of a bitch, this is the movie that should be 9 easy. And sometimes when we make our lists and there's a film that's 7 that's on our list over films that are 8, 9, and 10, it's because of a film like this and a scene like that that does it.
Right. I think too, like two things. There's the end, and in a certain sense, this movie is, you know, almost like a Twilight Zone episode, right?
Yeah,
because
sure.
it's like, aha, we have this, you know, here's the sneaky thing that, you know, you weren't expecting at the end.
Yeah.
And I think one of the problems with the movie not being able to be better is, as much as I think that scene was really good, the movie didn't earn it enough.
I forgot to say that. That's right.
And
that's
it
right.
really could have pretty easily.
Yeah.
And then when you got to that scene, I mean, it would just messed you up.
Would have.
And
it all happens in the same moment.
It would have crushed you, right?
Right. She learns about that. Yeah.
Because as good as it is, and it still works, but if the movie had just done more to actually earn what it wants you to do there,
then
it would have really worked so much better.
Yeah.
But also there are other things, like, you know, you mentioned that scene with her dad.
Yeah.
If we could have actually delivered something in that scene, instead of, you know, we're just going to say this and you have to really do the work to bring it yourself.
Yeah.
Because that scene was actually so cool.
Yeah.
But in my mind, watching that movie, I was kind of like, this is better in the script.
Absolutely.
Than like what we get, because the scene is like, you know, now she's got a consequence of being who she wants to be right now when she's 18, when she was 17, when she was 16, and she's like, this is this, and, you know, there's this stuff where her future self says, spend more time with your family and hang out with your brothers and all that stuff.
Oh, Mom is so cute.
And now she gets to this part where it's like, well, look, I mean, this is
right.
And her dad is like, I mean, that's what you wanted, and that's what you got.
And we're giving it to you.
And now she's really pissed that that's what she got.
Yeah.
But if that scene could have just been, you know, worked a little more so that it was actually doing it, instead of me going, here, I can explain all this scene.
Right.
But
yeah, totally
but it's
agree.
not because it's what's in the scene.
Right.
It's because I know what they're trying to say already.
Yeah.
Right? Stuff like that would have really
paid off more.
Would have really brought this movie up to, you know, this is the kind of movie like I said, from, you know, that time frame that I'm talking about. You know, like movies that are totally weird and tiny budget, like Untitled. Yeah. And like, you know, this sort of reminded me of Lena Dunham's like really early movie, Tiny Furniture.
Yeah.
Or, you know, whatever, a host of other movies that are total indie things that I give a 10 and go, I'll fight you.
Right.
Because this movie is better than all that stuff with all the budget, right? But it just didn't, you know, quite have... it wasn't quite committed. There was something about it that it was like, it wanted to make sure it had all the laughs it wanted.
Right.
Instead of going... just do what you're doing,
right?
And like hope some laughs show up.
They'll
or
come.
Whatever.
They'll get it.
Yeah.
Even guys will get the female humor,
right?
Because it's sort of a universal thing. Because it's not a movie by men talking about women, so there have to be a lot of tampon jokes,
right?
Like there's a lot of just humanity things in there. These kind of films all suffer from the same thing that you're describing, and I think I hadn't thought of the Lena Dunham thing. I hadn't thought of Tiny Furniture in a long time. I'm blanking on the name. It sucks whenever I try to think of it. I always think of the wrong title, which is Batteries Not Included. But what was you remember it's a sci-fi film, a fantasy film, about a real guy who put an ad in the paper like time travelers needed, like I really can do this. Do you remember that film? It's like a 90s film where a guy really is like convinced he can time travel and he wants a partner to go with him, and he really put an ad in the newspaper and somebody really replied, and it's sort of like their story and then it's fantastic later. But it suffers from the same things. It's like you have the germination of something that really happened and you fluff it in the wrong way instead of letting it sort of germinate in the right way. Just let it grow naturally and it'll be way more effective.
Right.
God, I got to find that title now.
All right. Well, we
awful.
babbled enough. Okay, like I said, next week we're going to do Red One. And actually, I'm looking forward to getting people's response to that too.
Yeah.
Which you could actually, I would love to have comments right now on this. Am I crazy? Does it seems like it's going to be good. I am the first to say it could be total train wreck garbage.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm kind of like hopeful that there's like another Christmas movie to add like to the mix, because it just seems like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Anyway, but we'll be doing Red One, and we're going to do that, and we're going to revisit how we rate things. Now at least you get a warning. I was hoping to just spring that on you.
I'm ready.
And go. You have to go right now.
I tell you what's good.
Now you get to know.
I tell you what's good and why, and you take it.
Right.
That's my rating system.
That's how I.
Yeah.
That's how I.
That's
rate
not really
movies.
how we do it.
Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah.
We will see you next week, and please share, subscribe, rate us on iTunes and YouTube and wherever else you're seeing this. It really actually helps.
Yeah.
Helps us. So thanks for tuning in. Bye.
Bye.